Welcome to the Ocean Studio here as part of the YAHOWAH blog. In our program yesterday, we reviewed the 7th chapter of 2nd Samuel. It is, to my mind, the most important prophecy ever issued because it speaks to issues that should be near and dear to us. It is, for some reason, never properly attributed to Dowd, even though Dowd's name, that would be David, appears throughout. It is a discussion between Dowd and YAHOWAH. And no other person is involved other than the conveyance of the prophecy, who is Nathan, who is serving alongside Dowd for YAHOWAH's and Dowd's benefit. It is strictly about Dowd. And it reveals that Dowd is the very Son of God. Reveals that Dowd is returning as king. That his throne will be for all generations and for all time and all places. And it reveals that Dowd is God's co-worker. It reveals that Dowd would have more than one life, more than two lives. I mean, it was obvious it should have been at least to everyone who wasn't screwed up in the head with religion, that when God said that Dowd is going to return as king and that he is going to be king of everywhere forevermore, that Dowd would have to have a second life, right? I mean, it's not rocket scientists to figure that out. You really have to be screwed up in the head, as is the case with Judaism and Christianity and Islam, not to put those facts together. The only other option you have is to say God's a complete dunderhead and he can't remember one name from another, doesn't have any clue who he's talking about. And if you're going to take that approach and you have a stupid God, maybe the problem is your stupid religion, because the God I know is not stupid. And so therefore, it's obvious that the person who's returning is Dowd, that the Son of God is Dowd, that the King forevermore is Dowd, that Dowd is God's co-worker. There's no room for anybody else. There's no room for a nameless Messiah in Judaism, nor room for a false Messiah in Christianity. It's just that cut and dry. Listen, we've had a number of programs where I have cited whole narratives from the Torah and prophets to absolutely and unequivocally destroy the credibility of Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. For those of you who know, I have written 13 long books, averaging about 750 pages each, to repudiate, excoriate Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. I have proven that the religions are not only completely false and irrational, fictitious, but that they have absolutely nothing in common with God. And frankly, I'm blue in the face. Tired of playing Mr. Nice Guy. I, surveyed social media this morning, and Jews are talking about how their great light shines because of Hanukkah. I want to tell you, your godforsaken 9-candle menorah is far worse than the golden calf of the Exodus. And how did YAHOWAH respond to the golden calf of the Exodus? He killed everyone involved in it. The reason it's worse is that the golden calf replicated something that was part of the Egyptian Apis the bull religion. The menorah corrupts, perverts, misappropriates the symbol that's the single most important symbol of God, his menorah. And so when you pervert and corrupt and twist a symbol that God says is essential to us understanding who he is, what he's offering, and what he expects in return, what you have done is far more egregious than the golden calf of the Exodus. I want you to take that to heart. And if you don't know why, be so stupid. Why are you celebrating something that has absolutely nothing to do with God? These were a bunch of morons in Israel, I don't care what you've been told, who were fighting over the right to fleece other Jews by confiscating the religious establishment. They wanted to upend God's Torah instructions regarding the Lowy serving as Cohen. And they wanted just to steal it. They thought they were holier than everybody else, so they were more entitled. So they led a civil war. They blamed it on the Greeks. It wasn't what it was fought over. It was a civil war. And even if it were against the Greeks, it was the end of prophecy. Books on the Maccabees are not prophetic. They're not inspired by God. They're about religious malfeasance in Israel. And the whole story of the menorah, the light of the candle lasting longer than it should, is so utterly meaningless. And for you to be so desperate that you would corrupt God's primary symbol, his logo, the 7-light menorah, to create a religious holiday, it just says you're revolting. You're spitting in God's face. It's horrifying. And you're not smart enough even when it's pointed out to you to recognize your great crime against God. His menorah has 7 lights. Do you know why? Because there's 7 MowedMiqraey. Pesach is the first day of Chag Matzah. Matzah is the most important day on the calendar. Matzah is the day you were released from the religious and political oppression of Mitzrayim, not on Passover. Passover opens the doorway to life. You got all that screwed up, and it leads to Bikurim. And you don't even know what these days represent. And more importantly, you don't know that Dowd fulfilled them, which is why the 89th Mizmowr, why 2 Samuel 7, why Isaiah 9:53, why all of the Mizmowr, and particularly 22 and 88, as well as the first 35, all proclaim that Dowd is our Savior because he is the one who served as the Passover lamb, who was actually crucified in 33 CE, exactly on the dates that he told us, 555 BCE, 600 years in advance, that it would occur. And then he wrote a first-person account 1,000 years in advance of precisely how crucifixion would take the life of his body as it served as the Passover lamb. And you're completely ignorant of that. Why? You read these Psalms banging your head against a stone wall, and you don't know what they say. Why is it that a goy has to come to you and say, your head is up your tuchus? You're so blind because the shit is in your eyes, and that shit is religion. It's Judaism. You've replaced the purpose of Pesach, Matzah, and Bikurim. You can't capitalize on the life that Pesach provides. You cannot take any advantage of the not guilty, innocent, acquitting effect of Matzah. When religious and political guilt is expunged, taken by Dowd and his soul into Sheol, so that you appear not guilty because you don't even celebrate the day. You don't observe the day. You're clueless as what the day even represents. What's wrong with you? You had your king go into hell on your behalf, and you don't even have the dignity to say thank you? You deny that he is the returning king. You deny that he's the Son of God. God said 3 times, he's my son. I'm his father. You're looking for an unknown Messiah, and this Messiah fulfilled Pesach, allowing the Romans to crucify him in his city And then he took your guilt into Sheol, into hell, on your behalf, and you won't acknowledge him as the Son of God. You won't acknowledge him as the chosen one. You won't acknowledge him as the Messiah. You won't acknowledge him and what Yahweh said, that he is the enabler of the very covenant that you think is a religious decree. I mean, literally, you're upside down. Rather than looking at things the way they are, you've inverted them all. You have no clue what Shamuw'el represents, when it's going to be fulfilled. I do, and I've told you. You don't even know it's a harvest or who's being harvested. I just spent 2 days not only translating Yeshayah's presentation of the fulfillment of Shamuw'el and Teruah, but going into beyond Yeshayah 17, going into Yeshayah 57, when he says that those who are right, that would be none of you who are religious or political, none of you who are influenced by social media, but those who are right about God, and therefore vindicated and acquitted, that they're going to disappear. Gone, just vanish. And yet, no one's going to give it a thought. It'll be less than a 1 in a million of the 8 billion people on this planet. You're not going to see their souls disappear, because a soul cannot be seen with the eyes. It can't even be detected with scientific instruments. Their souls are going to disappear. They're going to be collected. It's a cough. They're going to be brought home to Yahweh, and their bodies will be destroyed, because their bodies have no value. Body is actually limiting. So, it's the whole thing with your kosher fixation, as if what you put into your mouth is going to have some effect on your soul, and it does not. And your body is meaningless. I don't give a crap what you think about getting the body back from Gaza. Worthless. Once the soul is gone, the body provides no function. And if you want to leave this planet and to spend any time with Yahweh, you have to forego your body. And so you're going to not even pay any attention. According to the 57th chapter of Yeshua, you're not going to even notice. Those who are committed, those who are devoted to Yahweh and who are right about him, are going to be received. Their souls gathered in. And yet you're going to be clueless as to what has happened. Now, it's good for them, good for you, I suppose, because so long as you continue to be religious and political, wallowing in this slime and apart from God, things are going to spiral so far down that you're going to realize the IDF was indeed worthless. They were not only worthless on October 7th, they're going to be far more worthless when Alaska Flood 2.0 occurs. And it's coming, and soon. And so this is what God wants you to know, that you're going to have to experience rock bottom before you're going to realize that your religion has been counterproductive. Your politicians have lied to you. Your IDF is of no value whatsoever. It's perfectly suited to antagonize those who hate you. But the next war is going to be fought like the last one. Hezekiah found a copy of the Torah in the temple, and he read it. Hadn't been read in a long time. Why? Because Israel was too busy being religious, just as they are now. They read the Talmud. They dress the Torah up like a whore. The reason that the Torah has to be in this whorish vault is because what it says about Jews is abominable. It says you are obnoxious, that God estranged himself from you, that he can't stand you. Heck, Moshe, who you think was a rabbi, and no such thing. Moshe said they're so obnoxious, so embittered, so malcontent, that he asked God to kill him. He said, this job can't be done. These people are impossible. And it got worse from there. It didn't get better from there. Why you rabbis have created the Talmud. The Torah doesn't speak of them. And it speaks of Jews being so belligerent that God separated himself from you. And then he went all the way to the prophet Hosea, and he says, I want you to marry a religious whore so you have some empathy for what I've had to deal with Israel. Her religiosity stinks to high heaven. I want nothing to do with her. I don't want to hang with a whore. And she is a religious whore. I want you to marry a religious whore. Hosea, her name is Gomer. And then you'll have some empathy with what I've had to endure with these people. And now you'll understand while I'm writing a letter of divorce, I'm leaving them. Yeah, the reason you've had such horrible experiences these last 2,700 years, God left you. And ain't coming back until you return to him. What did Hosea do? Finally, he finds the copy of the Torah, and he says, oh my God, are we up shit creek or what? We got all this religious trash here. God won't even relate to us while we're surrounded by all this religious rubbish. He said, God, there's no way. You know, we got 185,000 Assyrians here that want to kill us surrounding Jerusalem. Not like 4,000 during Alaska flood. Not jihadists in tennis shoes. 180,000 of the most fierce warriors in the world. And Hosea is sitting there reading the Torah and saying, oh, there's no way that God's going to help us unless we get our act together. And Pesach, Matzah, and Bakurim is like a week away. You can't do it. And he said, yeah, obviously this is the plan. You laid the plan out. I'd like to follow the plan, but I can't do it in this amount of time. Can we postpone the celebration? God said, fine. Not about the timing of it. It's about understanding. It's about capitalizing on it. It's about listening to what I have to say and acting responsibly. The very thing that Jews have not done in 3,500 years. Not exonerating Goyim. They've been worse. But my message isn't to Goyim today. It's to Yehudim. Those of you who call yourself Jews, if you don't recognize that you're Yehudim and not Jews, there's no hope for you. So what did he do? He eliminated all of the religious rubbish, all disposed of, completely gone, cleansed the temple out of it, the city of Jerusalem. Every place was cleansed of religious rubbish. And then it took time to bring the Lowy and who were the Cohen, the priests, up to speed. So they knew what to do. And finally, everybody got their act together. It celebrated Pesach, Matzah, and Bakurim, and God sent a malach. One malach. That's all it's going to take. Just one malach. Poisoned all of the 185,000 Assyrian troops. Their bodies even vanished. That's, oh yeah, it's just a Bible story. Come on. That stuff's not true. Well, I don't know why we celebrate Hanukkah. It's not true either, but we don't need to be fixated on that stuff. It's not true, right? Well, then why did the Assyrian king write about his own defeat? You're familiar with that, aren't you? They went back to Assyria, and he said, yeah, I had him like a bird in a cage. I had him. I surrounded him. They got away. He lost his entire military. Just all he had to do is listen to God. Act upon his invitation. God issued you an invitation to attend Chag Matzah, Pesach, Matzah, and Bakurim. There's some prerequisites like stop being religious. Come to understand what they represent. He did the gentlemanly thing. He responded to God's invitation, provided an answer. Answer, yes, we'll attend. It was so wonderful that at the end of the week, and the week is not the celebration of Passover. Passover is just one day. Chag Matzah is 7 days. And the Mikra of Matzah is the most important day when you get rid of the stench and the stigma of religion. He said, hey, that was fun. Let's do it again. Can we do it again? You don't mind? Sure. Let's do it again. But it didn't take long. The threat gone. They returned back to their normal nature. which is to be political. It is to be religious. And so in that is their normal nature, fallen Yehud, Jews spitting in God's face all over again. And it hasn't changed since that time. And that is the reason that I'm talking to you this way now. I know I reach out all the time to Jewish influencers that are trying to defend Israel. Not one of them will admit that Islam is the reason that they are being attacked, or that this goy risked his life, received thousands of death threats for doing as Yahweh asked and excoriating the religion, writing the most comprehensive, the most chronological and contextual, best documented excoriation of the Islamic religion ever. Taking the entire Quran, 5 translations of it, putting it in the context of Muhammad's life, reordering it chronologically. So for the first time, it could be understood, proving that Islam is hopelessly anti-Semitic, that Allah is not a God, that Muhammad wasn't a prophet, and that the whole religion is based upon rabbis trying to make a buck and selling Talmud stories to Muhammad, which is why there is an Islamic religion today. I prove it. What do? They yawn. Don't give a crap. We're into our cultural beliefs, and we're not going to change our cultural beliefs for nobody, no way, no how. So what has to happen? We need to have another Hezekiah moment. Rather than 4,000 jihadists in tennis shoes, what about 400,000? 4 million. What do you like? That's what's going to happen. It's going to have to get so bad for Jews and Israel, and it's getting bad. I mean, look at the rise in anti-Semitism today. It's the worst it's ever been in world history. And Jews largely contributed to it by having the wrong response to October 7th and destroying Gaza, as opposed to attacking the real enemy, Islam, using the tools that Yahweh asked me to give you. Goddamn Religion. It's free. All 5 volumes. Goddamn Religion. You can read them at YadaYah.com or goddamnreligion.org. Or you take your pick. Don't much care. YadaYah.com. Go there. It's all there. It's all free. Can't make any headway. God's people, Israel, you're as stiff-necked and as belligerent as you've been for the 35 centuries past. And finally, it's going to take being destroyed. It's going to take an assault worse than the Assyrians back 2,700 years ago to get your attention. And you finally realize the IDF's not the answer. Your political parties are most certainly not the answer. That your rabbis are the problem. And finally, when the only option is Yahweh, you'll consider it. And so that's the message here. And so long as you continue to do really, really stupid stuff, like celebrating Rosh Hashanah, like celebrating Purim, like celebrating Hanukkah, all you're going to do is antagonize Yahweh all the more. So long as you're unwilling to say his name, to acknowledge his name, to acknowledge that Dowd is the Messiah and Son of God who fulfilled Pesach Matzah B'Kudim, you continue along the path that you are, and it's going to end up costing, I'm going to tell you the number, 10 million Jewish lives. Over the next 7 years, 10 million Jews are going to die. And I don't even have great news for the 5 million that will remain. Some minor percentage will be brought into Jerusalem. Some will actually be in Jerusalem. And they'll benefit from the sacrifice of the Adam of Parah. But at this point, your rabbis think that the Adam of Parah is a red, girly cow. I just can't fix stupid. too much for you to unlearn. And this is how bad it's going to be. You haven't even a clue as to why you were told the story of Gan Eden. You don't know that it was God who caused the fall of man. You don't know why God foreclosed on the experience in Eden. You don't know why God's offering to bring a remnant back into Eden. You don't know when. You're clueless as to what you would have to do to be among those who was invited back into Eden, or what you would need to accomplish once there to prevail. Literally, you're completely ignorant of these things. Let me share this with you. The fall of man was caused by God because he realized that it was hopeless to think that Adam had any chance of spending any time with God outside of the garden. None. He didn't listen. He didn't engage. He wasn't observant. He certainly was not reliable. God just says not gonna happen. And there's nothing in this garden that's going to change any of that. Everything was provided for you. And so the only way that you can actually demonstrate that you're worthy of God's attention and that you can be trusted is to listen to him now. And the first thing he wants you to know is run from, disavow your religion and your politics completely and totally. Kiss it all goodbye. Scrub it all from your mind. Then listen to him and act accordingly. You know, with Noach, there were no Noahide laws. It's just utter foolology. Real simple. Noach departed the Nephilim, the fallen. He didn't want any part of their religion and politics or their terrorist attitude. He was out with his family, minding his own business, separated from them, and that made it possible for God to reach out to him. God did. God said, I want you to do the following. Here's my instructions. Do this, and things will work out really well for you. That's what you need to do. You need to leave the fallen of religion and politics and start listening to Yahweh. He has provided the instructions, and then act upon them. And guess what? You will be kept out of the storm. But if you don't, you won't. It's really that simple. That's what you need to do. Are you willing to do that? So what God is saying is that because there was no chance that Adam was going to get any better, that God just says, I'm going to give up on this. That's why YAHOWAH was created. YAHOWAH was not created for Yahweh. YAHOWAH was created because it wasn't good for man to be alone. And God was saying, I'm going to walk away and leave you alone. Wookie, you're making it kind of difficult, pal. I might have to send you back onto a terra firma. Okay, there you go, kid. All right. I love the Wook, but sometimes the Wook can be busy. So YAHOWAH was created because Yahweh says, I'm leaving you, Adam. And it's not good for you to be alone, so I'm going to give you a companion. And she was there to help Adam. Obviously, she didn't do a very good job at that. And so she failed at her mission. Adam failed at his mission. He was asked to work in the garden and to engage, and he did not do so. He was asked to listen. He did not do so. He was asked to be observant. He was not, and he proved to be unreliable. Made a mistake, and rather than correcting that mistake and learning from it, he just doubled down and wallowed in it. And so we now have the opportunity with Adam and YAHOWAH booted out of the garden with instructions to them that this is now what you need to do. 6,000 years later, God's going to give us a chance to come back. And those of you who are listening, who are willing to disavow religion and politics, God has a plan to scrub you clean of the guilt that you've incurred thus far. And you're allowed back into the garden as newborn babes, second chance. But if you screw it up like Adam and Chawah did, you're going nowhere. Now you're going to have the tree of knowledge. He's the choder. He's speaking to you. He's going to do everything in his power to enable you to learn, to not repeat those same mistakes, to get your act together, to be observant, be good listeners, to be responsive, and to be reliable. And if you are, then God's going to empower you and enable you to leave this planet and soar through the universe. And so, Sukkah is the re-entry into the garden. Sukkah from Sakak and Gan from Gana, exactly the same concept. Sheltered, protected, garden conducive to life. And so it is then that we are going from the Garden of Eden to the larger version of the Garden of Eden, the earth restored to the conditions of Eden as a protective enclosure for life, where you're going to have the opportunity to learn all about this. If you don't make a decision between now and then and you survive the time of Israel's troubles, which begins in just a matter of months, then, you'll have the opportunity to prove yourself worthy. That is what God is offering. And for that to occur, you can't be like the fallen outside the garden, such that God regretted even creating man, because then the fallen were religious. God despises religion. It is the single most repeated topic throughout the Torah and prophets, is that God is disgusted by religion. And so what did you do? You became the most religious people on the planet. There is no other ethnicity that is so associated and integrated with its religion that when you say Jew, they think Judaism. When you say Judaism, they think Jew. You've done this to yourselves, and God is none too happy. So the 89th Mizmowr, which is what we are considering, and we went into 2 Samuel 7 because it is a parallel revelation to it, is for you. It reveals that there was no Jesus. There was no Mr. Christ. There was no valid reason to believe anything Akiba said or his false Messiah, Bar Kokhba. You should never have listened to Maimonides. It reveals that the Christian New Testament is as phony as is the Talmud, as is the Zohar, as is the Quran, and that the truth is consistent and reliable. And it begins with an acknowledgement that Yahweh is God's one and only name, and he has a beloved son, his co-worker, through whom he enabled the benefits of the covenant, which include eternal life, becoming not guilty, being adopted into God's eternal family, being enriched and empowered by him. And that beloved son is Dowd David. So with all of this known, let's continue with where we left off. Because when it comes to such things, Yahweh, quite frankly, is beside himself. He is annoyed to the point that he has made his point in such a vivid way that there shouldn't have been a single church, not a single synagogue, not a single mosque, not a temple, not a shrine, not a house of God. And yet men have erected millions of them. There are 2 vile satanic trophies sitting on top of the Temple Mount, for crying out loud. And you don't have the courage, the wherewithal, the intelligence, the character to obliterate them. You had Al-Aqsa flood where they murdered 1,200 of you, raped you, plundered you, abducted you. And even with Al-Aqsa flood, there wasn't a single one of you that said, well, let's at least do the very smallest thing we can do. Let's tear down Al-Aqsa Mosque. It obviously is the inspiration for this horrible treatment of Jews. Get rid of it. And the ugly boil alongside of it. Do it. You won't. I will. So just as God never once asks us to worship him, to bow down before him, or to pray to him, he most certainly does not want us building houses for him. Ever. You heard that correctly. God never once asks us to worship him. He never asks anyone to bow down to him. He never encourages anyone to pray to him. And he most certainly doesn't want us to build houses for him. The fact is that Yahweh's in the construction business, and that his intent is to establish our covenant home. Now, having returned to the prophecy where my journey began some 24 years ago with Asher, where I looked up this amazing Hebrew word that is a verb, that is a proper noun, that is a noun, that is a preposition. And it's used in the midst of the 89th Mizmowr, just as it is in 2 Samuel 7. And it is exceedingly revealing and yet just overlooked. Now, we also must acknowledge that, according to God, it's Dowd's place of honor and his kingdom, which will endure forever. Not the rabbis, not Judaism's, not Goyim's, not Christianity's, certainly not Islam's, not an unnamed Messiah. It's Dowd. God's explicit. He's not stupid. When he says Dowd, he means Dowd. God is the one. Yahweh said, he is my son and I am his father. He said it in 2 Samuel 7. He said it in the 89th Mizmowr. It wasn't until many years after my initial quest to understand Asher in 2 Samuel 7:14 that I came to realize that God was speaking of very much of what Paul would do to pervert and misappropriate Dowd's legacy. And in this regard, Yahweh has put us on notice that he's going to defend his son and he's going to condemn Judaism and Christianity. And religions are inseparable. Why? Because it was Jews who taught Paul how to be a rabbi and misappropriate and misconstrue, errantly present statements from the Torah and prophets to promote lies. And that's what he did. And then it was the same religious community that allowed him to get away with it because they did not have the character, the courage, the intellect to say, wait a minute, you're just lying. There was no Iusu Christou. It was Dowd who told us exactly when he would arrive in 33 CE. It was Dowd who told us he would do these things. It was Dowd, the Messiah, the Son of God, who was on that death stake. He was killed because he was indeed the king, and this was his city, is his city. And there are countless prophecies that affirm this. So Christianity should have never have seen the light of day. All rabbis had to do was denounce it based upon Yahweh's prophetic testimony. But they didn't. So after this brief intermission, one instructed by the text of the Mizmowr, we are going to return to the voice of the psalmist. This portion of the song was written to counter the absurd notion that the gods of men, such as Adonai, Hashem, the Lord, Allah, and Jesus, are somehow analogous with and comparable to Yahweh. That's nonsense. Mankind's gods were modeled after the men who spoke for them. Iusu Christou is Paul. Allah, Muhammad. Hashem is the rabbis. They were afforded characteristics which were sufficiently fearsome and demanding to command obedience by blending a plethora of seemingly plausible and yet irrational notions together. The Mizmowr reads, the spiritual realm knows and appreciates your wonderful and marvelous contributions, Yahweh, and also your trustworthiness and the community of the set apart. Mizmowr Psalm 89:5. By contrast, who in the skies of the material realm can be equated to Yahweh? Who is similar or thinks like Yahweh among the sons of gods? Lyrics to sing, Psalm 89:6. The psalm is saying, if your God's not Yahweh, your God was created by men. Yahweh created men. Men created gods. Just the way it is. And that's what he's saying. That no one is comparable to Yahweh. His uniqueness is defined by the very verb that he said was the basis of his name. Are you aware of the verb that is the basis of Yahweh's name? It's Hayah. That's what he told Moshe. You certainly ought to listen to him, right? Yahweh answered when Moshe said, who shall I tell the children of Israel is sending me? And Yahweh answered, I am who I am. Ehayah, Asher, Ehayah. I exist for the benefit of the relationship. I am. That's the uniqueness. He really is. And he proves his existence through prophecy and the brilliance of his testimony. Yahweh is God. The others are not. So this is a riddle with a ridiculous easy answer. The one who is equated with Yahweh, the one who thinks like Yahweh, especially among the children of God, of course, is Dowd. He is the man after Yah's heart, his judgment, his thinking, motivations, his inclinations. The affirmation appears in Samuel. Listen to him, 1 Samuel 13:14, a passage which we will consider later in this review, also to refute the ill effects of Christianity. And while that's true, this proclamation was designed to set up a comparison between the wonderful accomplishments of Yahweh, which are acknowledged in heaven, contrasted with the meaningless myths attributed to the sons of gods conceived within the material realm, Dionysus and Jesus being among the impostors. The words men have attributed to them pale in comparison to the majesty of Yahweh's message. If asked to uphold the single most important aspect of Yahweh's character and his greatest contribution to humankind, I'd say it was his trustworthiness. Without it, nothing else matters. Now, proving it is the purpose of the Nabi, the prophet, as they validate the credibility of Yah's reputation, enabling the very purpose of the Torah, which is to teach and guide us. Without trust, the instruction has no merit. And with it, contradictory scriptures and false gods are all rendered moot. Yahweh's contributions are many. He created an enormously large, complex, and yet functional six-dimensional universe, none of which we will explore until we shed these physical bodies, until Yahweh says, you're worthy of me taking the risk with you, such that you become an explorer, such that you become my student, such you become my kid, that I can go show off the universe with and not worry that you're going to go off and do something stupid, that I know you'll listen to me and respond appropriately. And if you make a goof, you'll immediately say, ooh, that was not advisable. Learn from it and go from there. I hope you're among those. He conceived life as well, writing a three-dimensional language to propagate countless possibilities. One of these days, he's going to give us that code. He gave us free will and a conscience to wield it. He designed us so that we'd be able to understand him and respond accordingly. Then he not only gave us his Torah and prophets, but he and his son also fulfilled the promise. We aren't explicitly told, but I think the community of the set apart represents the covenant family. The covenant is not only Kodesh, set apart, but our Heavenly Father's children, are the principal beneficiaries of his steadfast commitment to the truth. Now, among the most ignorant and irrational notions ever popularized by man is that we all worship the same God. The actual God begs to differ. Religious gods are fundamentally different from one another, and so are their scriptures and their names, making this religiously unifying belief utterly ludicrous for a rational individual. What's more, the traits common among false gods are universally foreign to Yahweh. He doesn't want you to pray to him, doesn't want donations, doesn't want you to worship him, doesn't want you to fear him, isn't threatening with you with the notion of obey me or I'm going to torture you forever in hell. None of that's true with Yahweh. And he proves his existence through prophecy. Yet another way, aligning our thinking with Yahweh necessitates a willingness to reject all religious presumptions. Until you reject religion, you are not in a position to listen to God. The reason I excoriate Hanukkah and Purim and Rosh Hashanah and a 7-day celebration of Passover and perverting Yom Kippurim to a day of affliction and thinking that Sukkah is about living in a God-forsaken, leaky roof hut as opposed to the promise of returning to Eden is because until you abandon this religious muck, till you clean your attic out of the fluff that has been put in there, all the rat droppings, the cockroaches, they're scurrying around up there. You have to get rid of them before God's going to even allow you to process his message. He does not want his insights, his inspirational words commingled with religious trash. It says the Almighty is inspiring and awesome in the counsel of the set-apart ones. Tremendously great while inspiring reverence and respect beyond all those around him. The counsel of the set-apart ones, that is the covenant family. Today, it's comprised of Yehudim and also of Goyim. That's what one would expect from the Shamuw'el harvest, which is next, since it's symbolized by 2 loaves of bread and it's varieties of wheat. And these are the individuals who have come to understand Yahweh's name, who recognize what Dowd did by fulfilling the spring Miqraey, understand each of the 7 steps along the way for us to return home, who know the 5 conditions and 5 benefits of the covenant, who have seen now this whole portrait that God has painted, all framed and put into perspective so that they are in a position to act upon it. We are the set apart ones. And we are actually positioned within the inspiring counsel of our God. And we view Yahweh as tremendously inspiring. We revere and respect him more than all others. Certainly beyond all men. Now, to know Yahweh is to respect him. To understand Yahweh is to revere him. The 89th Mizmowr or Psalm continues, Yahweh, God of the vast array of spiritual implements, the Sabbath. Who and what is comparable to your awesome power and extraordinary gifts, which are all around you, Yahweh, including your unwavering commitment to the truth. Mizmowr, Psalm 89:8. Obviously, we're in agreement. God's greatest gift, his most important attribute, is he is Amunah, honest, dependable, reliable, trustworthy. It's from Amun, the enduring truth, and Aman, to support, confirm, uphold that which is trustworthy and reliable, dependable, verifiable, confirming that which is correct and accurate. So why wouldn't you trust Yahweh? Why would you erase his name? Why would you celebrate holidays and religious events that are promoted by men and their Talmud and their Zohar? and in your culture as opposed to what came from God? Do you not think that God is trustworthy? What is it about you? Why do you give lip service to a God that you don't listen to? Why don't you recognize precisely what is being said here? No, this was written as a rhetorical question, and yet as few as 1 in a million know the simple answer. Most don't even know where to look to find it. And this is now the 4th time that in just the opening stanza of the 89th Mizmowr that we have been confronted with emunah, trustworthiness. 4 times already. What are we, 6 statements into it? 5 statements into it? I guess we're 8. Sometimes you lose count when you're having fun. 8 statements into it, and we've seen emunah 4 times. You notice a trend? Maybe a common denominator? That when God said that Dowd is his co-worker through whom he enabled the benefits of the covenant, and that he had made this promise to Dowd, such that Dowd serves as our savior. In the context of saying, emunah, 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 do you think maybe God's trying to get your attention and say, hey, guy, think. Let it go in this ear. Let it come in these eyes. Keep the mouth shut for a moment. Process this information right up here. You should trust me in this regard. I know what I'm talking about. I just happen to be God. But you don't. Not one of you that understand the message of the 89th Mizmowr. And here, emunah was in 89:1, 89:2, and 89:5, and here it is again in 89:8. Not surprisingly, we're going to encounter emunah again. Another 4 times. Why? Because 8 times is a magic number. Why is 8 a magic number? You ought to know that 6 plus 1, the number of man created on the 6th day, carbon-based life form, atomic number 6, plus God who is 1, Echad, equals God's idea of perfection, 7. Just like there are 6 steps in the MowedMiqraey to the 7th. Pesach, Matzah, Bakorim, Shabuah, Teruah, Kaporim lead to Sukkah, our return to the garden. It's all about 6 plus 1 equals 7. But wait a minute, this is 8. Why were there 8 souls aboard the ark? Why is Sukkah an 8-day celebration? Because there is an octave beyond the 7. Because 6 gets us back to the garden. 7 is in the garden. 8 is when there are enough of us who have earned God's trust, who have shown that we're willing to listen. Yeah, there, Silverman, listen, observe, and then act. Respond, showing that you're reliable. Because those who do get to experience the 8th octave. You get then to be enriched and empowered so that you can leave this planet and go explore this universe with Yahowah, and then be there when this universe we're living in now finally dies of its entropy. And God's going to say, let's create a new one. Let's do it together. It'll be fun. 8. Yes. 8. Mizmowr 89:14, 24. 89:33, and finally 89:49. 8. The number equated to that which is infinite. Ever seen the number 8 when you... What is the number 8 when it's... The sign for? That would be right. Infinity. Dowd's life and lyrics provide the antidote for Adam in the garden, for Abraham, for Yishak, for Jacob, for even Judaism. Pauline Christianity and Judaism has a cure. That cure is the Messiah and Son of God, our Savior, Dowd. Those who know rely. Those who don't believe. Trust is empowering, enlightening, enriching, and liberating. Well, faith devalues everything. It bewilders, it depreciates, it ensnares, it leads astray. Having now established the proper vantage point to appreciate Yahweh, the psalmist specifically targets a pervasive and improper approach, one whose destructive nature arises from the sea, which is a metaphor for Goyim Gentiles. Now, the sea can be exceedingly good, but it can be exceedingly bad too. You confront a tsunami or a hurricane, you will have some respect for the sea. But it's also from the sea that the final Goyim that restores Yisrael will have come. You can see it behind me. It is where life on this planet emerged. The sea is the ultimate solvent and therefore cleanser. It is water that will cleanse this mortal remnant of Yisrael. It was a covenant of salt. Salt comes from the sea. You have conveyed vivid parables, a mashal. You have created easily remembered proverbs, which are word pictures. And you have used them to establish leadership over the raging and devastating, presumptive arrogance, the geuth, the undue and unwarranted status, the moral failures, along with the violent agitation associated with the surging of the sea. Hayam of the West, serving as a metaphor for Goyim as well, for nations and for people. When its turbulent and surging waters rise up in deceit, when its stormy conditions and strong currents, which are contaminated with biological excrement and defiling human dung, are aroused, using clever trickery to craft delusions, you expose them, then you stop them. Mizmowr lyrics to sing, Psalm 89:9. The most popular belief system among Gentiles are Roman Catholicism, Orthodox and Protestant Christianity, Sunni and Shia Islam, progressive socialism as it's manifest as Marxism or communism or liberalism, and of course Hinduism. From God's perspective, they are not only presumptive, holding unwarranted status, they are deceitful. And they are predicted to become ever more turbulent and eroding life on this planet. They will collectively rise up and seek to erode Israel based upon the strong undercurrents which have contaminated people's thinking, eroding their ability to think, deceiving them. For example, the majority have been led to believe that there's a place called Palestine. Even Jews who use Palestine. I mean, unbelievably stupid of you. And that somehow it's perceived that oppressive Jews are somehow occupying or colonializing land which belongs to Palestinians. I mean, I've endeavored to expose this myth, but only Yah can stop these miserable parasites. There is no such thing as a Palestinian. There never has been. The closest thing to one would be a Philistine, and they were eliminated 2,300 years ago. God is quite frankly telling you that he sees religion's malfeasance, political malfeasance, as if it were human excrement. So now that the stage has been set, the cast must be introduced for the battle to begin. And in this drama, there is a villain and there is a hero. And the hero has an accomplice. It says, "You humbled and you crushed that which is comparable to the reprehensible and deadly nature of the pretentious pride and the stormy arrogance of the boisterous afflicter and his false god. Rahab, the haughtiness and the frenzied activity of the insolent and audacious one, who presses his contentious and opposing plea, the defiant and confused musings associated with emboldened verbal diarrhea, religious worship and submission, along with senseless behavior and insubordinate taunts of the self-willed one, who falsely claims divine authorization in concert with the monstrous sea and idolatry. With your empowered and your fortified YAHOWAH, protective shepherd and sacrificial lamb. Your YAHOWAH, the one who cultivates the seeds for the final harvest. You isolate and separate your adversaries." Wow. So this is lyrics to be sung, 89:10. There are two ways to look at this, and both are acceptable, both probably intended. There are a number of people who will qualify as those that Yahweh is going to crush. And those he's going to crush are contemptible, they're reprehensible, they are deadly, they're profane, and they're popular, which means that these have to be leaders of political or religious ideologies that have become pervasive. And not just pervasive anywhere, but pervasive as they are harmful to Israel and to Yehudim. Okay, so by using terms that speak of profane, that means common and popular. And corruptions that are popular and common in society fall under really two categories, political and religious. The likelihood is this is religious. And God is then saying that because these are addressing the religious institutions that have become popular, that are also counterproductive to Israel, that those that are promoting them are pretentious, they're arrogant, they are boisterous, and they are speaking on behalf of a false god. They're insolent, they're audacious, they're contentious, they're confused. They are promoting religious worship and submission, senseless behavior, taunts. And they're going to be resolved, according to Yahweh, by the YAHOWAH. So who's the YAHOWAH? There's three of them. First is Moshe. He's been retired. Yeah, that thing back 3,500 years ago, Yahweh said, "Moshe, there's a crag over there. The people are looking for water. I want you to go talk to the crag, and the crag, it will release the waters that are necessary to resolve this problem." I wrote about it. You've already presented Numbers 5. That explains what we're trying to achieve here. And he went and whacked the rock instead. Don't whack the crag. And so here we are. We have a time where God has a means to resolve the religious malfeasance that is so contrary to the well-being of his people. Now, those religions would have to fall under 3 or 4 headings. Judaism has been the most condemning of Jews, the most destructive to them. That's why we began the program, by excoriating it. Second to that is Christianity. Christianity is what caused the Holocaust. It has demeaned Jews for 18 centuries, 19 centuries. Shuttles, ghettos, all manner of pogroms, the Holocaust itself, all the direct result of Christianity, because the Christian New Testament claims that Jews were responsible for killing the Christian God. Now, not much of a God if Jews can kill him, and my view has always been, if you really believe that Jews killed your God, then you should be worshiping the Jews, not your anemic God. So Judaism, Christianity, of course, the single most devastating religion now to Jews is Islam, and socialism, Marxism. Hitler was a Marxist, a socialist, and so was Stalin. And you think of the number of Jews they murdered. And you listen to Marxists today, progressives today, and their vitriol against Jews. Those are the four. Those are the four belief systems that are the most hostile to Israel. And God is saying that he has a means of resolving them, and that he is going to fortify and empower Ba'oz Ata by way of your ability to enable and empower. You're going to equip a Zeroah to deal with this. No, it wasn't Dowd's job. So actually, this isn't and it wasn't Moshe's job. Moshe is the protective shepherd. Moshe didn't do this job. Moshe worked with Yahweh to lead the children of Israel from religious oppression, but unfortunately, the Jews took their religion right with them. You could lead the Jew out of Mitzrayim, but you couldn't take the Mitzrayim out of the Jew. So it didn't happen then. Dowd's had the great frustration of having his son lead a coup against him that was devastating. And Israel returned to being exceedingly religious with his son, which is why the northern kingdom barely survived his son's kingship. So wasn't Dowd. Dowd made it possible for us to expunge ourselves individually of religiosity by fulfilling matzah, but it did nothing to eliminate it for the world or for God's people, just for the individual who avails themselves of what Dowd had achieved. And so God is saying, I'm going to empower a Zeroah. Well, there's only one person that Yahweh says, I am affording my 7 spirits to, my 7 Ruach, include the very Ruach of Yahweh. The Ruach of Gabor, which would be empowering, along with the Ruach of Chakma, intelligence, Bien, understanding, Etzah, making him the tree of Dayath, knowledge. In addition to Gabora being empowered and fortified and enabled, restoring a respect and reverence for Yahweh. He is the Zeroah, the final Zeroah. He's the one that Yeshayah spoke of in the 53rd chapter of his great prophetic book, that you're not going to understand what he's saying here until you understand the identity of the person who finally came to perceive the nature of the 3 Zeroah. Yes, so Dowd was the second as the sacrificial lamb, and the third is the choder. God refers to him as Ha-Nakri in the 29th chapter of Devarim, Deuteronomy. In 2 Chronicles 6, he is Ha-Nakri, this observant foreigner. He is the one cultivating this harvest. In fact, the term is used by Yeshaya in the 11th chapter, where he uses the participle form to tell us that the one who is cultivating the Shamuw'el and Teruah, Lakot, and Katsir is, in fact, by title, the Katsir harvester, the Lakot reaper, and that he is also the Zeroah who is cultivating these harvests. And in the same sentence, he refers to him as a parar, which is this productive bull who is fruitful in this regard. Zeroah, Parah, Katsir, Lakot, all in association with the fulfillment of Shamuw'el and Teruah. And so in this case, well, I am absolutely acknowledging that the greatest of the Zeroah is Dowd, because he served as the sacrificial lamb, which is how the Torah uses the term Zeroah. I'm also aware that Yahweh and the prophets use Zeroah based upon its actionable root, which is Zara, which means to sow and cultivate seeds leading to a productive harvest. And that this Zeroah that Yahweh uses to rectify the damage that has been done to sully Dowd's reputation, to steal his accolades and achievements, to create false messiahs as exist in Christianity, Judaism, and Islam, and then to repudiate these things, that Zeroah is Yada, and he's speaking to you. And not so coincidentally. He's the only person to write 5 volumes repudiating Christianity by juxtaposing what the New Testament says and what Yahweh actually said. He's the only one to repudiate Islam by reordering the Quran chronologically and setting it into the context of Muhammad's life. 5 volumes there as well. And he's the only one who has proven Judaism false, not only through the rest of the 25 volumes of the YadaYahowah series, but particularly through the Babel series. 3 volumes there. He did, has done, continues to do, did this morning when we began this program. Exactly what Yahweh is acknowledging here as the Zeroah, empowered by the 7 Ruach of Yahweh, the only person so equipped, thereby isolating and separating, dispersing your adversaries. Lyrics to sing, Psalm 89:10. So this is God's prophetic pronouncement of how his beloved Son will have a herald who serves to restore his reputation and respect, and to reacquaint God's people with the very name of God himself. And that's why we're here. And that's why I opened the Ocean Studio again for this program today. And that's why I thank you for listening. And I hope to see you again tomorrow.